Well, good afternoon. My name's Michael Burt. I'm the director of the Center for Sustainable Health at ASU's Biodesign Institute. And I'd like to give you a very different look at a clinical trial approach than we've seen. And really to be controversial, even to focus on the earlier panel, I mean, as baldly as I can put it, focusing on stage 4 biopharmaceutical clinical trials is not going to change healthcare in the United States. It's as simple as that. We spend huge amounts of money on drugs that have very little effect. We just saw that statistic on cancer mortality. We've had almost no impact on cancer mortality in the last 10 years. So unless we start moving to early detection and prevention as our primary strategy as a society, we simply will not be dealing with the major issue that faces American society and American healthcare in the future. So that's why I'm delighted to talk to you about Project HoneyBee and provide some slides at the beginning that are very different from what you've seen. And let me start. The Economist. So who in this room does not have a smartphone? One person. Okay. Well, we always need an outlier. Congratulations. But this is where the world's moving. If you look at this line, this curve made Bill Gates the richest man in the world. It's a very shallow curve. Look at mobile phones, BlackBerry, Nokia, but this is what smartphones are doing. It's almost a vertical line. And the impact of that, if you want a number, 723 billion. Actually, you're going to see on the next slide, this is a little bit dated. It changes so fast. It's actually $779 billion today. It's Apple's market cap. And why this is important is this is really the platform, the technology platform that will help us and the world move to early detection and prevention as opposed to a biopharmaceutical intervention for stage 4 cancers that have very little impact. And the transition here is what we'll see with smartphones is really the use of biosensors that will be embedded, ingested, attached, inserted, that will allow us to track physiological data over time, continuously, to be truly predictive for those, we talked about stratification, to stratify who will be at most risk for the diseases that will be the diseases of the 21st century. Non-communicable diseases, cancer, heart disease, Parkinson's, those diseases will be very much predicted by the physiological data that biosensors will capture, transfer to smartphones, and then be incorporated into healthcare systems. Because what we'll find in clinical trials in the future, and starting now as we're working on, is that the best control in a clinical trial is not someone else, it's yourself over time. And we can see that most dramatically now with Parkinson's, with the apps that track and changes over time, with voice and other physiological phenotypic measurements. So where Project HoneyBee comes in, so why HoneyBee? Honeybees in nature are the very best creatures at finding, collecting, communicating, and then very importantly, validating the data that they find. They go out, they find a flower, they know where the pollen is, they come back to the hive, tell it where that flower is located, and very importantly, have a discussion about whether that data, that signal to noise is valuable or not. And that's what biosensors and smartphones are truly going to transform in healthcare in the future, is that ability to validate data, individual data, truly personalized data over time, where the control is yourself. So what we've established, and I'll show you a complete lineup, are the use of commercially wearable devices biosensors that can be used in clinical settings or for remote patient monitoring. We connect them to accountable care organization quality metrics as corroboration, aimed at patient engagement and education, and we've established a clinical validation network. So here's our validation network. We're very connected to the Health and Human Services, Patients Like Me as well. We've just signed an MOU with Patients Like Me. And we have ongoing trials or prospective trials with all the organizations on this list. Many are in Maricopa County, but we're also doing them around the world, for example, in Taiwan right now, where we also have a very large biomarker and biosignature initiative as well. So not a bad group there. And here's a sample of, I'll be taking, well, you can kind of work through these. I think what's truly the method, and we have 10 of them, that 2 slides that'll show you this. So I think what's important about the physiological data is the breadth of diseases and indications that can be aimed at using that kind of data. So we're currently doing trials or about to launch trials September 1 that range from atrial fibrillation, heart failure, to fall prevention, a very wide spectrum of possible indications and diseases that can be focused on using physiological biosensor data with commercially available devices right now. And as you can see from our clinical partners, this seems to have an attractive orientation. And what we think is unique, though, looking at, is in every one of our trials that we're looking at launching on September 1, you may know or may not, but accountable care organizations have 33 quality metrics that have been established by CMS. So we're correlating those ACO metrics in different trials that we're doing in order to combine and parallel the physiological data with the patient satisfaction data in order to create both hard and soft data around patient engagement and education. So here's our HoneyBee leadership. One of our members is here, Carrie Robinson, in the bottom right. But it bears mentioning where our orientation comes from. This is Lee Hartwell. Lee is the chief scientist of our center. You may know that Lee is the former president of the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle, and also the 2001 Nobel Prize winner for his work in cancer research. So when we talk about the shift from late-stage disease treatment to early detection and prevention, this comes from someone who's been in the field and literally developed the field of cancer therapeutics and genetics for the past 40 years. So this is unstoppable. So if you can imagine the impact that this is going to have, just look at how successful Apple has been just in a month in enlisting people for research and HealthKit, their software program and platforms. The ability to incorporate physiological data into clinical trials and then correlate that with ACO metrics, and using organizations like Patients Like Me with hundreds of thousands of data points and patients to work with is truly going to transform clinical trials in the future. So, with that, thank you very much.